Wednesdays are for people's elbows, super kicks, and springboard cutters. You know what that means. It's the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast hosted by Michael Davis on Boom Broadcasting, and it's time to pick up that mic. Welcome to the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast right here on Boom Broadcasting. We hope you guys are enjoying this very special episode of Drop the Mic. We actually flip-flop. Usually at the 3 o'clock slot on Tuesdays, I'm with my dad doing Dad and the Boys. And then Wednesdays, we leave for a wrestling podcast. Well, I'll be honest, I was so excited to share what happened this weekend. I was like, while I'm still on this WrestleCade hangover or on this incredible high of the roller coaster that comes from WrestleCade weekend, I wanted to share my experience with you guys. So we're doing a little different layout today. I'll have pictures next to me right here as we go on throughout. So, because usually if you've watched Drop the Mic, we're usually sitting in this spot. You know, you see the microphone right next to me, but that's not how we're going to do most of today's episode. Now, I also watch Survivor Series War Games, and you know, we've covered it plenty. The Nightcap did a really great job, hosted by Mouthing Off with Mike on Saturday night, to talk about the Survivor Series War Games with Rhea Ripley's team becoming victorious. Shinsuke Nakamura taking the U.S. title. Was very shocked they ended LA Knight's title run when they did, but Shinsuke being a 3-time United States champion now. Gunther, Damian Priest, it looks like Finn Balor and Damian Priest are no longer going their separate ways. It looks like Damian still has a lot to handle in addition to Rhea Ripley, so they're continuing one of the better Raw storylines in quite some time. And then, of course, CM Punk helping Roman Reigns and the OG bloodline become victorious. Hopefully Bronson Reed is okay. But, you know, Survivor Series was great. They did a good job. But I spent most of my weekend in Winston-Salem, North Carolina at WrestleCade. Now, I'm going to try to share some stories. Some of them I can't share just because of how crazy the weekend was. I would turn to my dad several different times, and I was like, is this really happening? Did I just see who I saw? And it's a wild experience. If you guys have never been to WrestleCade, I know our audience is dispersed throughout the entire country, and there were people from the UK who made the trip over to Winston-Salem, North Carolina for WrestleCade, and it's a phenomenal experience. Me and my dad, I've talked about it on Man Behind the Mic before, that wrestling is something that bonds us. I actually talked about it on the previous episode, Man Behind the Mic, right before Thanksgiving. And it's something that bonds me and my dad. And I love it. It's awesome. I wouldn't ask for anything else. So this was really cool. WrestleCade was a Saturday event for us. We would come, we would do the fan fest, we'd get the autographs, we'd go get a quick bite to eat, we'd come back for the super show, and we'd do it all in one day. Well, we had the opportunity a couple years ago to do 3 days. We had won tickets, and Dad was like, hey, why not? Like, let's take off work for Friday. Let's make it a whole weekend thing. And it really did change our experience, and it changed, how we viewed WrestleCade. WrestleCade was like, we packed so much fun into one day, and then to be there for the entire weekend, we don't get to miss anything. And a big part of being there for 3 days are podcasts. So we'll share right here. This was a view of mine. There were 2 podcasts that day, and it was awesome. Like it was really cool getting to this particular podcast. Was Al Snow's OVW. And if you recognize some of the people on the panel with him, they're in the TV series Wrestlers. Now, me personally, I don't have a Netflix subscription. I know that needs to change before January for Monday Night Raw, but I hadn't gotten an opportunity to watch the Wrestler series. So this was my first introduction to these people. And that's why I think they do this, is for that exposure and to a new audience. And that was me for them. I hadn't watched the series. I had heard of Hollywood Haley J. I had heard of Al Snow, obviously. And it was quite a good panel they had here. and getting to share their stories, getting to be very vulnerable. I saw a connection with Haley and two of the fans there that, really made me respect her, and, has a new fan now just because I got to see a person interact with a person rather than a wrestler being this celebrity that's sometimes unapproachable at other events. So being able to do podcasts has been a huge experience for me with WrestleCade. And in years past, they've done the Shane Douglas podcast, and that is my dad's favorite podcast. And ever since we started doing WrestleCade, and I mean, we've had phenomenal experiences, but dad's favorite podcast was the Shane Douglas podcast, and didn't get to see that this year. And that's okay. I know they needed a little bit of variety with their podcast and what they featured, but I mean, these podcasts have really, up the experience level. And it's really cool that we get to experience those as fans. Now, since we were a part of a 3-day, we went ahead, we got the VIP third row, and we had great seats and got to experience TNA's pay-per-view Turning Point, which you guys may have seen online a few times. And I heard people knocking it like, oh, why is Riddle there? Oh, why is, this? Why is that? Guys, I'll explain that in a second, but this was a solid pay-per-view. I mean, this was a really, really good pay-per-view. I want to go ahead and put this number one in terms of shows that I have seen at WrestleCade. That has been the bar for me. GCW was great last year. There's been some super shows that were really good. This past Saturday super show was pretty good. There's been AML episode. Dude, honestly, AML, it's like their WrestleCade. It's like WrestleMania weekend for AML is the day after on Sundays, and I'll mention that in a second. Like, this TNA pay-per-view, like from top to bottom, was so good. I mean, you start out with the three-way, in the pre-show, if you will, Rosemary's beating Savannah Evans and Xia Brookside. But then you had, Mike Santana and Frankie Kazarian open up the show. And then you had the Turkey Bowl return. I honestly thought, with how hated and despised John Schuyler is in the North Carolina region, I thought John Schuyler was going to have to wear the turkey suit, but no, it was Brian Myers. Joe Hendry getting a pretty solid win there. Rhino coming out to replace PCO. I'm personally more of a Rhino fan than PCO. Moose and Laredo Kid. I remember watching Laredo Kid and Garza Jr., now known as Angel in WWE. And they were a great, exciting tag team. I got the privilege to meet Moose a couple years ago. Fantastic. I mean, and people were complaining like, why is Moose X Division champion? Samoa Joe was X Division champion. Remember, that's the division with no limits. And these guys put on a good match. But then there was, guys, the last 4 matches of this show were incredible. Steve Macklin, Josh Alexander, no DQ. They went all out. Obviously, I was rooting for Josh Alexander, but, they both brought the fight. Originally, it was supposed to be the Rascals and Kushida versus the Hardys and Ace Austin for this match. And then Trey Miguel had travel issues. He couldn't make it this weekend, but Matt Riddle stepped up. And can I just say, Matt Riddle, and I wish I had the picture here of me and my dad meeting him on the screen. Matt Riddle's awesome. Whether it was, my dad told Matt Riddle to his face Saturday during the convention. He's like, I wasn't a fan of yours. But then we were able to go to our first ever Raw event a couple years ago. The dark match with Seth Rollins, Matt Riddle on the show. And Matt Riddle could not be pulled away from security. Spectrum Center like rushes you out. I'm just going to say, no matter if you're there for a concert, a wrestling show, a sporting event, they will rush you out. They do not like you being there longer than you have to be. They were rushing Matt Riddle out of the arena, but Matt Riddle kept like running away from them and taking pictures of fans. And it's those cool moments. Jake Hager, formerly known as Jack Swagger, had to be a replacement a few years ago for another event. But Matt Riddle was obviously there for the convention, meeting fans, everything, and he made himself available. And I thought it was really cool that he was like, yeah, I'll wrestle. He got to be a part of this 6-man tag. It was a great surprise, even though the Rascals and Kushida were probably the heels, or were supposed to be. Matt Riddle coming in, and especially with the Hardys there, it was phenomenal. Masha Slamovich, Jordan Grace, 2 out of 3 falls. Masha Slamovich had a hard-hitting 3 days. I think she wrestled all 3 nights at WrestleCade. And Jordan Grace, this tells me, her losing this 2 out of 3 falls match, this tells me that Jordan Grace is on her way to WWE. It has to be. I don't think she's going to AEW. She had the opportunity to carry the Knockouts World Championship into the Royal Rumble last year. She's been able to be a part of NXT events. And the same thing that Tony Khan has done with New Japan stars, allowing them to wrestle with Forbidden Door and, wrestle here and there. I think this was WWE's way of enticing Jordan Grace to sign long-term with WWE. So I'm very much expecting when Jordan Grace's contract expires, when she's done with TNA, she will go to WWE and have a phenomenal career. And then the main event was Nick Namath, Eddie Edwards. They put on a great show as well. Still in the show, if you will, Nick Namath term. And that was the TNA weekend. So that was just the first day. We also got to have the, Fan Fest, the meet and greets, which I've gotten to experience several times. And there were 2 people I wanted to point out here that, made the weekend above and beyond, like, great. These were my 2 favorite people I got to meet. And it was really cool. I really, really, really enjoyed meeting these 2. I'm going to have to go ahead and put Kamille up here. Kamille was so nice. I was very intrigued because, you're walking by all the meet and greets and the tables, and there's huge lines or there's shorter lines. There's vendors, who are, kind of, standing between you and the talent sometimes. That wasn't Camille's table. Kamille was there by herself, and she had a big poster, like, some of the prices, but prayers are free. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And so I go up to Kamille, and we start talking, and we started talking about like connections with Lodi and the weight room revival, and that's something I really enjoy getting to go to. Got to talk about her and her AEW run, her NWA run, and she was just above and beyond super nice. Super nice. This was one of my favorites to meet this weekend. And, I know my sister, a big Mercedes Moné fan. I'm sure she loved to see that I got to meet Kamille. But I also got to meet Camille's husband, Thom Latimer. And you see me, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. I get to hold the 10 pounds of gold for the second time in my life. The first time was ever 2005. Jeff Jarrett was the champion at the time, and I was 6 years old and, holding it like this. And now I got to hold it like the actual NWA champions hold it, to the side right there. This man was such an encouragement to me. He talked to me like just a normal guy. He didn't talk to me like he was above me or I was beneath him. He talked to me like a real human being and a real person. And I went up to him and I'm like, hey, I've enjoyed watching your stuff. Like, yes, the Bram, yes, the Thom Latimer. But I remember, Kenneth Cameron in the original Ascension. When NXT, you had to go like somewhere on the web to find NXT before it was on TV. And I got to, and the whole reason I did that was there was this tag team, the Ascension, before Victor, which I've gotten to meet him and Connor, but it was Connor and this man, formerly known as Kenneth Cameron. And I was so blown away by that tag team. And he was so nice. He was so humble. He's like, wow, I'm surprised you remember that. That was a long time ago. But he was just such an encouragement to me when I was able to just, let loose. And, I was vulnerable with him and like stuff that I was going through at the time and still going through, because this was just a couple of days ago. he was so nice. And these are the interactions. Like, yes, I got to meet several different people. Like, I got to meet one of my like favorites. Like, I got to meet Jim Ross, an opportunity I never would have been afforded to if it wasn't for WrestleCade. If it wasn't for WrestleCade, I would have never been able to have this opportunity to meet Jim Ross. And that was awesome. Like, that is so cool. I know he's struggling with his health a lot. So it was really awesome to see that he made it for this trip. And he's he's the GOAT when it comes to commentating. But these are the interactions. These are the interactions that make it worth it. I feel like I have at least one or two every year. And for me, Kamille and Thom Latimer were the best people I got to meet. And then I got to see this guy again. If you've watched The Man Behind the Mic, you understand how important Nikita Koloff and his obedience has been to my story and my healing journey. He prayed over me a year ago. I received that healing, and now I'm good. I'm okay. And he asked how I was doing. I'm like 100%. And he was blown away. And he stopped right there and prayed again over me, just thanking the Lord for, how I'm feeling and everything. So to be able to get to tell Nikita a year after he prayed for me that I am good, I'm 100%. I'm enjoying this weekend as much as I could. It brought a special place to my heart. So very appreciative that I get to see Nikita and I get to experience this weekend with my dad. This was awesome. The Super Show was great. There's several other different wrestlers. I'll probably post those pictures on social media, Facebook, Instagram, especially my personal accounts. But Saturday was great. Sunday, there was more. I got to interview Chris Lee and Cliff Bumgarner. That episode is available on demand through Boom Broadcasting. But they did a documentary on Dorton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina, when Giants walked here. Chris Lee was actually the first picture I took with the celebrity this weekend. With a wrestler, with a personality, whoever had booth. Chris Lee was my first picture. And I've told Chris Lee this story either on camera or off camera about how I would, have my mom, watching WXII and, I'd see Chris on TV and she's like, he wrestles. I'm like, no way. He wrestles. So it was so awesome to see Chris Lee being able to be here for WrestleCade, getting to meet him in person. Finally, we've had several communication back and forth through text or Twitter, and being able to interview him and Cliff on the Drop the Mic Wrestling podcast was such a special time for me. I'm so happy I've gotten to meet Chris Lee, somebody that, I idolized as a kid because he's went my route. He's gotten into the wrestling business. He's in the broadcast, radio, TV, like that, facet, that industry. And that's what I want to do. This is why I'm doing a podcast. This is why Boom Broadcasting exists. This, like, everything that I want to do, Chris Lee has done. And it's such an encouragement to me. And they did a phenomenal job. They did a phenomenal job with that documentary on Dorton Arena. And not only about the wrestling perspective, but talking about the historic nature of Dorton Arena and how it was a design and how it was intended. They knocked it out of the park. So Chris, Cliff, everyone who was in that documentary and helped with that, I am so proud of the product you guys put out for When Giants Walked Here, which is available on the PBS app. So you guys should totally go watch it because you can. And that was a big part of wrestling this weekend. WrestleCade being such a great time with my dad, Tracy Myers, Brian Hawks, Josh Gary, and the entire team. There's probably a huge team that I never even know or got to thank. There were several wrestlers who volunteered and helped and, cleaned up the ring, swept, Bob Keller. Like, they have a great team who puts together a convention that doubled in size this year, and it seemed almost flawless. Like, that is impressive that there is a tradition back. And I was talking to my dad this past week about Thanksgiving, and he's like, this is, my favorite Thanksgiving. I'm like, why is that? And we talked about, some personal stuff. And he was like, I remember Starrcade 83. I remember, Starrcade was Thanksgiving Day. And Dad's talked about the Starrcade memories, like Flair for the Gold. And the fact that I couldn't be a part of those Starrcade events because I wasn't around yet. I wasn't a thought probably. But now I can experience WrestleCade with my dad is so huge. And it's because of the work with Tracy and Brian and Josh and their team that's allowed those opportunities and allowed those memories. And obviously, where I'll be next year. And it's going to be a great time. And there's so many other stories, like I could say, like, passing by Sting in the lobby or riding down the elevator with Ricky Morton, riding up the elevator with Brad Attitude, getting to see JAC absolutely kill it. He had a phenomenal weekend. All these great things and all these great memories. But one of the things, I didn't get a picture because I was so in tune to his message, George South, brought this up. And this is how I want to end Drop the Mic this week. George South, does like a Sunday morning service, like a worship service, right before everything else gets going for the final day. And he was like, you can sum up our jobs pretty easily as wrestlers. And he's like, our job is to make you forget about everything else in life. You don't have to worry about going to work the next day. You don't have to think about, bills or whatever, or jobs, whatever. A wrestler's job, their job description is to entertain you, to make you forget, to let you escape into this world. And for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was able to escape. And for that, I couldn't have asked for a better weekend for WrestleCade. So to you guys, thank you to everyone who made that possible. I'm super excited to go next year. And that's our episode. Drop the Mic. That was our huge episode. I wanted to cover WrestleCade, but because this was a great time. And guys, thank you for bearing with me. You got a 24-hour early episode with Drop the Mic. Dad and the boys will drop instead tomorrow at 3 p.m., probably covering more of the New York Giants Thanksgiving game potentially. And then we'll be back Friday at 3 p.m. to talk about, the Monday night game. So that's our schedule for this upcoming week. Guys, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Let me know if you were at WrestleCade. Let me know if you have great memories. I know Matt was there, the insider Matt. I know Four Sides of the Ring was there. Connor was there. Like several other people were there that I got to meet and greet. But guys, let me know if you were there. Let me know your favorite moment from WrestleCade. And yeah, go get your tickets because I'll see you next year. But you don't have to wait till then because Drop the Mic will be back next weekend. Till then, don't drop the mic. We'll catch you here next time.